Hello, my name's Scott Davis, and welcome to New World Birth. This is the weekly neutrino forecast for December 28th of 2014 to January 3rd of 2015. And on December 28th, we have the sun. We can see it here as this black circle with a dot in it. It's in Capricorn. It's also in the 58th hexagram, and we can see on the outside of the wheel the chop mark for the 58. Numbered from bottom to top goes yang, yang, yin, yang, yang, yin. And then the 58th hexagram is mapped to an opening in an energy channel called a gate. And right here we have the 58th gate of aliveness. The joyous stimulation is the key to joy. It's located in the root center in a collective logic energy path in the understanding circuit called the channel of judgment, a design of insatiability that connects to the 18th gate of correction, work on what's been spoiled, the vigilance and determination to uphold and defend basic and fundamental human rights. And I found human design to be amazingly accurate in describing the person that I use it as my primary tool when I provide readings. And we have the following activated gates on December 28th. The sun in the 58 with the earth in the 52. The north node is in the 57 with the south node in the 51. Mercury is in the 54 with Venus in the 61. Mars is in the 13. Jupiter is retrograde in the fourth hexagram. Saturn is in the 34. Uranus is in the 21. Neptune is in the 55. And Pluto is in the 38. So obviously not every gate activation forms a channel, but this information can be very helpful if you know your own human design chart, because some of these transits will form channels with potential in your personal body graph. And you can get your human design chart by going to jovianarchive.com, click on the button that says get your free rave chart, and then enter in your birth information. So the neutrino forecast is basically a weather report. And no matter what the weather, your individual strategy and authority is the correct choice for having an authentic experience regardless of the program. And as Ra Uru Hu said, whatever the weather is going to be, you have your neutrino umbrella. As long as you're experimenting with your strategy and authority, the weather is for your pleasure. And we begin the week with one channel definition due to the transit field. With Saturn in the 34 and the North Node in the 57, we've got the channel of power, the design of an archetype, which will be with us until January 2nd. This channel brings an attunement to the body to have an acute early warning system to anything in the immediate environment. This increases our intuitive awareness through the power of a sacral response. This may affect folks to feel more on guard and alert to dangers in the moment. This is like an animal instinct to engage in battle or jump out of the way with a split-second response from our attunement to sound and vibration. People will be more in tune with what's being said from the tone of the voice of the speaker rather than the words spoken. And sometimes this is experienced as a coolness by others. This is an individual channel of survival. It represents the archetype of what it is to be human. The defined splenic center brings intuition and well-being, but Ra warned that non-splenic people may let go of something that is good for them during a transit defining the splenic center. It's individual circuitry, so this brings melancholy or blue feelings that Ra described as being the muse, and would be best used in some type of creative expression. And then with the defined sacral center, this is going to affect non-generator types in feeling busy and on the go and having more energy than perhaps normally. But just recognize that this is a conditioning experience, and your design strategy and authority is still your correct way of making decisions. So we're going to be looking at the sun's Ravi Ching line values daily, because 70% of the neutrinos we receive come from the sun. And as Ross said in Living with the Program, the lines of the day when talking about these daily shifts of line values, he said that we can always take advantage of the themes of the day. Now, if your strategy and authority doesn't lead you in that direction, you can always notice how the program is affecting others in your environment. So let's get started. On the 28th, we begin with the sun. It's in the third line of the 58. Uh, and the sun in the 58.3 is electricity, exalted, the individual whose electric vitality creates its own stimulation and is not dependent on others, the energy to fuel independent stimulation. Detriment of the quality of fire is dependent on the fuel and subject to its influence, good or bad. The energy for aliveness that's dependent on others for stimulation. And third line days, we're talking about the martyr, trial and error process, bonds made and broken, a system of discovery by figuring out what doesn't work. Things bump into us on the third line day, so we should be careful on the roads, be careful of swinging doors, swinging elbows, things like that. You might have bonds made and broken. Um, it's a good material day, might be a good day for business or work on the material plane, but you got to be careful because things can go wrong, but those things are here to lead to discovery. And then later on the 28th, the sun moves up into the fourth line of the 58, up into the opportunist line, the shift happening at 7:33 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The times I'm going to give you are Eastern Standard, so you want to convert them to your local time zone. Where the sun is described as focusing. Sun in the fourth line of the 58 is focusing. Exalted, a natural specialization that when confronted with a multiplicity of stimulation will have no inner difficulty in focusing on the appropriate influence. The energy to fuel recognition of which stimulation is of value, detrimented and impressionability that becomes confused when confronted with a multiplicity of stimulation, and in trying to accommodate all of it becomes unstable. Energy which becomes unstable when overstimulated. And fourth line days, we're moving from the lower trigram, which is more the personal process, to the upper trigram. And so we're moving from more of an inward perspective to more of looking outward. And the fourth line themes are things of friendship, companionship, networking. Opportunist days are great for social interaction. People are more open to networking, being friendly and social. And then on the 29th, the sun moves into the fifth line, so up into the heretic line of the 58 at 5:38 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where the sun is detrimented in the 58.5, and it's described as defense. Detrimented, the assumption that the best defense is a good offense that might allow strength of character to enjoy questionable stimulus without succumbing to it. The energy for aliveness which forsakes self-defense and will embrace questionable stimulation. Fifth line days, again, the heretic, it's a day of suspicion, but also universalization, where something can leak out and spread very rapidly like a virus, whether it might be a YouTube video, where there's suddenly millions of viewings, or a Facebook post that goes viral. There's a great deal of suspicion and paranoia on a fifth line day, which impacts the nature of relationships. I mean, basically, the fifth line is projection. Versus positive, they could do it, they'd be great at it, but then if the person doesn't do it, can't do it, for whatever reason the expectation is not met, then the negative projection comes in with its accompanying punishment. So, as I've said before, it's really only paranoia if they're not out to get you, and with the projection field, often they are. Seduction is also a theme of a fifth line day. And then also on the 29th, Mercury moves from the 54 and joins Venus in the 61. And Mars moves from the 13 and into the 49. So let's start with Mercury. In mythology, Mercury was the messenger of the gods. So this is communication, expansion of human consciousness through communication, not just as words, but also as music, according to Ra. And um, so and Mercury basically is, what do we communicate in life? Well, we communicate the message of our design Mercury through the medium of our personality Mercury. And what might be communicated when Mercury is in the 61? Well, the pressure to solve an individual mystery, because this is the gate of mystery, inner truth, the awareness of universal underlying principles. And Mercury's detrimented in the first line of the 61 due to Venus also being in the 61. This is occult knowledge, detrimented where reliance on secret knowledge increasingly demands ascetic withdrawal and leads eventually to obscurity, where the pressure to know the mysteries can be so strong that one can be eventually incapable of handling esoteric realities. Also on the 29th, we've got Mars, like I said, moves from the 13 moves to the 49. This is the gate of principles. Ideally, the transformation of forms based on the highest principles and not simply for power. And Mars is also moves into the first line it moves into the first line of the 49, which is the law of necessity. Revolution has no support unless it's perceived as necessary. Exalted the understanding and appreciation of this law to maximize the expansion of support and thereby viability. The awareness of that potential of a principle is based on it being acceptable as viable. Detrimented the misuse of influence, to insist on that necessity can be created out of actions. The helter-skelter syndrome, the commitment to commit acts of disorder as proof that disorder exists. Over sensitivity to rejection that can turn a principle into a crusade. And Ross spoke of Mars being an extraordinary and immature energy resource that lacks refinement and is subject to outbursts. Mars represents the warrior archetype. And by following our strategy and authority, we slowly refine the energy of our design and personality Mars from immaturity to wisdom. And then the 30th, the sun moves into the sixth line. So we're on the roof of the hexagram in the role model line of the 58th gate. The shift happening at 3:42 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The sun in the 58.6 is carried away. Exaltation, the tendency to practicality, that while thoroughly enjoying external stimulation, has the instinct to draw back when its independent integrity is threatened. The energy to fuel independent integrity that will maintain its identity in times of stimulation. Detrimented when its basic intelligence is effectively stimulated. The natural desire for attunement will lead to identify so strongly with the stimulation that it's at risk of losing its identity. The energy which fuels loss of identity in times of stimulation. And so role model up here on the roof of the hexagram, if you think about sitting on the roof of a house, we don't tend to look at the house as much as looking at everything that surrounds the house, what's happening in the neighborhood. And the sixth line day, Ra talked about not to get stuck with your head in the clouds because you'll end up with something banging into your kneecaps or your shins. It's a day where there's a lack of focus on what's going on around us because folks are looking beyond their immediate environment. So like the third line day, there's certain dangers of not seeing a car coming, maybe not seeing a bill coming, because the focus is not on the immediate environment. So then on the 31st, we have the sun moving out of the 58 and joining Pluto in the 38. And then the Earth also moves from the 52 and into the 39. So with this shift, we pick up a new channel definition. So we'll talk about that in just a second. So we've got the Earth. It's in the 39th hexagram and gate of the provocateur. Obstruction, the value of obstruction in provoking analysis, assessment, and reevaluation. The shift happens at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, with the sun in the 38th gate of the fighter, opposition, the ability to preserve individual integrity through opposition to detrimental forces. And the sun in the first line of the 38 is qualification, tempering opposition based on circumstances, exalted the psychic attunement that guarantees proper action, the psychic gift of knowing when and how to fight, detrimented the tendency to oppose as a general rule, the drive to fight as a general rule. And so we're in the new hexagram, first, second, third lines are in the lower hexagram, more personal in their perspective. So people are more looking inward, more absorbed in their own process. The theme of the first line day is fear or an anxiety that needs to be investigated. So it's a day to study, not to act. It's a day to look into things, not to jump. It's a good day to deal with things you don't understand, can't make sense of, or just simply don't know. And then later on the 31st, the sun moves into the second line of the 38 with the and this shift happens at 11:52 p.m. So just less than an hour before midnight on the 31st. And the sun's exalted in the 38 too, due to Pluto also being in the 38, and it's described as politeness, opposition that does not transgress normal codes of behavior, exaltation, the value of discretion, the energy for intuitive awareness, for discretion. And second line days, as we talked about, is about waiting for the call. People are waiting for something. They're waiting to be called because of their natural talents. And people are stuck in their own trip. Again, lower trigram. So it might not be a great day to have a big social event because folks are going to be more inclined to stay home than venture out with the hermit energy. Also on the 31st, we've got Venus moving out of the 61, leaving Mercury, and moving into the 60. And so in human design, Venus is very powerful, though deeply misunderstood, according to Ra. It brings morality, values, natural law in which we deal with the other and the consequences of the world around us and what disturbs you on a moral level. Your personality and design Venuses tell us about the moral dilemma that you're going to work with in your life, and that if you don't act with moral clarity, Venus can be unkind in this retribution, according to Ra. And Venus in the 60th gate of acceptance, limitation. The acceptance of limitation is the first step to transcendence. And Venus is exalted in the first line of the 60, which is acceptance, the ability to maintain inner harmony when confronted by external limitations, harmonic energy that can deal with external limitations. With the Earth in the 39th gate, and we've got Neptune in the 55, this brings the channel of emoting until January 5th, which will be a time period where people feel pressure in the form of an emotional wave. That the best way to deal with this level of sensitivity is to appreciate the lows as well as the highs, recognizing that it's all part of the human experience and is temporary for those of us who don't have this channel in our birth charts. This can lead to lessons that yield wisdom as long as we can stay present in moving from hope to despair, back to hope, in that type of cycle of the emotional wave. Uh, we can tap into greater creativity by fueling our melancholy or feelings of blue into some form of artistic expression. Again, this is individual circuitry. This brings deeply romantic and acoustic sensitivity. Um, so listening to music or talking with a loved one is also favored by this. And then folks without the defined root center may find that this transit definition can bring more pressure. And then on January 1st of 2015, the sun moves up into the third line of the 38 at 9:57 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The sun's exalted in the 38.3, and this is alliance exalted, the ability to sustain through integration with similar forces, thus ensuring the vitality to persevere, the energy to integrate with others in times of struggle. And like we said earlier, third line days, bonds made and broken, trial and error process, a system of discovery by figuring out what doesn't work, are all themes of the martyr. So you might see those themes being played out during the time that the sun is in the third line of the 38. On the second, the sun moves up into the fourth line of the 38 at 8:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The sun's exalted in the 38.4, again due to Pluto also being in the 38, where it's described as investigation, analysis, which strengthens opposition. Exalted, the detective who develops or the insider who accepts a joint opposition to success that can only be based on trust, the energy to recognize who can be of value in times of struggle. Fourth line days, we change from inward perspective to more looking outward again, with themes of friendship, companionship, networking, social interactions, things of that nature. And then also on the second, Mercury moves out of the 61, joins Venus in the 60. Let's get our root center back on here. And uh, we Mercury, again, we talked about it being communication. So and what might Mercury communicate? What might we hear people talking about when Mercury's in the 60? Well, the pressure to mutate. This is the gate of acceptance, limitation. The acceptance of limitation is the first step in transcendence. Mercury is exalted in the first line of the 60, due to Venus also being in the 60, and it's described as acceptance, the ability to maintain inner harmony when confronted by external limitations. Harmonic energy that can deal with external limitations. And then on the third, the sun moves into the fifth line of the 38, so the heretical line of the 38, and the shift happening at 6:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The sun is detrimented in the 38.5 due to Pluto also being in the 38, and it's described as alienation, a stage in opposition where one is totally isolated, detrimented, alienation experienced as painful confinement that by its very nature blinds one to the possibility that there are those at some point who may come to one's aid. The energy for stubbornness so strong that it's difficult to recognize that there are others who can help in times of struggle. And fifth line days, again, we're talking about the heretic. We're talking about projection, first positive, then negative, with themes of suspicion, but also universalization, paranoia, and seduction being all fifth line themes. And then a big shift also on the third is the North Node moves from the 57 and into the 48. And so this definition goes away. And the south node, of course, also moves from the 51 and joins Uranus in the 21. Make that a little better. So let's talk about the nodes here. Ra talked about the nodes as being openings for the neutrino energy that comes from outside of our solar system, and it represents our environment. And the nodes are almost always retrograde or moving reverse from our perspective here on Earth. So this shift represents moving from the first line of one hexagram to the sixth line of the previous hexagram. And the north node in the 48 is activating the energy of depth, the well, the necessary and qualitative foundation that is a prerequisite to establish the common good. And in the 21, the south node is about the hunter or huntress biting through the justified and necessary use of power in overcoming deliberate and persistent interference. We've been talking this week. The sun is continuing to move through the 10, the 58, the 38, and the 54, which are the hexagrams associated with the Vishnu God's head, which was covered in last week's offering. So no matter what energies are conditioning you during the week, just remember that this is an experience about being a passenger that's riding in a vehicle driven by the magnetic monopole. So enjoy the scenery. Let the vehicle take you where you need to go through using your strategy and authority. Every day we have is a blessing, no matter what dramas beckon to distract us. We're all here just giving the performance of a lifetime on the world stage. So take some time to observe the play as well as act your part by remembering you're a spiritual being that's having a human experience. I'd like to thank you for checking out New World Birth. The next segment of the weekly neutrino forecast will be for January 4th of 2015. It should be available on the 3rd, when we're going to continue to look at the influence of the heavenly bodies as they transit the sky and the hexagrams of the I Ching. You can check us out on Facebook, Blogger, or YouTube because there's New World Birth presences in all those places. And I encourage you to share this information as video or text as widely as you choose. And I invite you to contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com if you have any questions or you wish to schedule a reading. I am providing readings, and I've done my best to make these affordable. So if you're thinking about getting a reading, please contact me, because I'd love to provide you a reading during these uncertain times. You'll need to be able to call me in Maine, in the USA, or we can connect with Skype to receive your reading. We're also accepting donations to keep these reports freely available. And as always, I am blessed that you've taken the time to connect with my appreciation and passion for all these ancient mysteries and their application to our journey during this incarnation. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste, in Lakesh, and as Ra would say, love yourself. So again, much gratitude. Peace to everybody, and all my best. Look forward to connecting with you in a reading, a future video, or in a question if you have one. Anyway, we'll catch you next week.